Hello, everybody. We are back. And my first complaint today, we're not going to have a whole episode on this because it's really like 2 seconds, is I cannot for the life of me find the recording button for Zoom. It's like every time I go, and it's because it's one of these, it's like a window that you can expand out and it adds all the little menu items. But then if you go smaller, which is what I tend to do when I do this instead of full screen, that button disappears. All right, rant ended. There you go. The more you know. It's just, I guess have a big screen. That's just always the way to do it. Have some big, 80-foot wide screen, and then it's never that issue.
Now, you've got Mac, right?
Of course.
So don't you have the little Zoom
How
icon
dare you
up at the
suggest it
top?
would be? Well, I guess it could be Linux. So that no offense to everybody that's in Windows, but yes, offense to everybody that's in the Windows world.
If you look at the top, you should see a little Zoom text.
Yep.
If you click that, the record option's right there.
Oh yes, it is. It's always up there. This is why I like looked at because they've all these buttons and then they've got your little the regular controls. Wow, thanks. Now I feel small. All right, just start right out. It's like, okay, I obviously have no technical skills.
No, we just haven't had enough coffee to start our day.
That would be it. Maybe it's because it's a little early and I had a late night. It was like, um, I do like the organization thing. I think that's where we're going to go with on this because it's funny because how you describe it is also what I run into. Is it's sort of like it's one of these things that we have things that they get out of hand. It's like you let it go on autopilot or whatever, and if you don't have your autopilot set right, the next thing you know, it's like that's a freaking mess. And it's funny because I was just talking about some other things. Actually, one that's much more near and dear to everybody's heart. Just the other day, it's like finances stuff. I've had so much stuff automated that it's like I just have forgotten about it. I just like it just happens. And that's not a good thing to do because then you need to go check back because you'll find stuff where it's like, what the heck? Why are they charging me for this? Or where did this come out? Or what is this thing doing? And it had gotten out of hand for part of the reasons because I was tired of chasing down because we had all these different varying medical bills for varying organizations and varying kids and me and all this kind of other stuff that was going on. It was just a little, and it was always odd, just like a little here, a little there. And it was something was like, okay, well, I'll just go put this on some automated payment and that on an automated payment, all that. Long story short, short story long, depending on how you look at it. It was basically one of these that the next thing I know, I'm like, God, there's all this money moving around and I'm not even paying attention to it anymore. And I think if we take it into it's the other one. It's like I think you mentioned your folders and your file structure, or your files and your folder structure. I think that, and then emails is another one. We've talked about email before, but I think it's another good. It is an extension of that conversation, and then there's a lot of stuff around that. So I think that's just like I think we talked about like using your history and stuff like that. If you're on a Unix box, some of these things so we can keep track of like, what have we done? What is the work that we're doing? What is that thing that I solved yesterday or that document I created last week and finding it.
Well, it's also along the conversation we've had in the past where, there's working in your business and working on your business. And I think this kind of falls into that, working on your business because organization's a key part of keeping things smooth, because if you can't find what you're looking for, you can't find that bill or you can't find that document you created, that could impact your business.
And that's honestly, that's a lot of what we're selling to everybody is like, that's what IT is supposed to give to you is an easier way to find your document, read your document, scan your document, search your stuff, organize your data, report on your data, and all of that. So I think that is perfect. I think this will be the organization episode or something along those lines. So, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our series, our season 21. We're actually wrapping up. I think probably this one and maybe one more episode, and then we will have maybe a surprise topic for season 22. I know it'll be a surprise to us. Maybe it won't be a surprise to everybody else. But this episode, we're going to talk about organization as we're talking through just some of the things that we run into on a regular basis going through our professional lives. One of the things that is it's always a balance or trying to find the right balance as an entrepreneur. And I think it goes way beyond being technical and being in a technical industry, but also just entrepreneurs in general, because it does come up a lot. It's the idea of working on your business or in your business. You have to do both. but you're trying to figure out the best balance to building your brand, your business, to going out and finding customers and working with them versus doing the work that they're paying you to do. So you have a couple of things that sort of work against each other, but we don't work against each other. My name is Rob Broadhead. I am one of the founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. And on the other side, I'm going to actually give you two names to start this time. So I'm like really spoon feeding them as we have Michael Malash over on the other side. Say hi to everybody.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Malash, one of the co-founders of Developreneur and also founder of Envision QA.
So we started in the pregame here, which you could see out on YouTube. We started talking about this a little bit, and it feels like it's a good subject for us because it's just, for one, it is something that you have to do periodically, and two, as we're recording this, we're hitting about a mid-year, the middle of the year, and it seems like everybody does this stuff in the new year. Everybody's in this like, hey, I'm going to change stuff up. I'm going to do all this, blah 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 blah, and then you sometimes have like spring cleaning fests in the, sometimes as part of cleaning everything else. Maybe you're like throwing some documents out and cleaning some stuff up, particularly if you are close to or involved in any sort of that educational rhythm where, kids, adults and stuff like that are like graduating from they're finishing up a semester and they're wrapping up maybe for a summer break. And so it's easy to just like, effectively clear out your locker and throw out all the crap you don't want, which usually is really almost everything that was in your locker. Now, as we get older, we don't have those rhythms as much. We have to make sure that we create those. And we do have them, I think, from a technology point of view, from a software development point of view. I think one of the great things that good markers is that we typically will have like a project or a release or something like that. And so those are good contained parameters around stuff, around our documentation and our notes and our code and all those kinds of things. Now, we've talked before, the code that you're creating, if you're a software developer, should be sitting in version control somewhere. And that should be just like easy to search through, tag stuff, branches, all that, different topic. The other material is where we run into, I think it's easier for us to lose track of it. That other material being emails, which we've talked about many times, but now it's in the past, it's been email and documents. Like, did we put together like even just status reports? We may have design and requirements documents that we're working on. We may have had some sort of write-up that we did for a demo or a code review, things like that. Means that they do have a value to us moving forward because they're either a template or they are reference material that we can go back to and say, hey, we wrote this thing up and this is something we can refer back to help us through our tasks. A good example in my most recent stuff, and we've mentioned this before as well, is like we're constantly spinning up servers and setting stuff up, whether for a new project or promoting something out to production. And in the last few days, once again, I got myself into a pickle, we'll say, because I was putting a Django Python server behind Apache, getting that thing rolled out. And I've done this now, I don't know, dozens of times in the last couple of years, but it seems like every single time I do it, it's a slightly different Linux variant. It's a slightly different library. It's always going to be a slightly different version of Python and Django. And it's very sensitive. It's very fragile. And so I end up having like digging my way through all this and plus that and getting like making sure your SSL certificate is in the right place and making sure those are up to date and they all match. And short story long again, one of the reasons that I can do that, or at least jumpstart it, is I have all my notes from the prior time. Now, two things there is like, I need to know where my notes are. I organize those fairly well because I have a Confluence page. And then within that, it's just a link of how-tos. And I have it from almost every customer I've had. It'll be, how to set up the initial development environment or how to connect to their servers or how to, what are their development standards and some things like that. It's a sort of like a one-page cheat sheet. How do I get a hold of that person? It's like a one-pager for that company, for that project. So you've got that. Now we've got these wikis as well as our documents and our folders. And if you're like us, Michael and I in particular, I think run into this a lot where you've got, and if you're a side hustler, you're going to run into this, is you've got your work, and then you've got your side hustle work, and then you've probably got your family stuff, and then you've got things that cross all of these. And figuring out where to put stuff is very important. One, because then that way you're going to find it easier to find it. And also it's making sure that you keep that up to date, particularly as you shift maybe from when you're working more in a certain mode for your job versus your side hustle. And maybe that you're in a lot of let's say you're in a lot of marketing mode for your side hustle for a while, and then that comes up later in your business. Well, you want to make sure that you say, oh yeah, I did that before, but I did it for my side hustle and not for my business. So before I pass it over to him, it's just like, I think that it's about, to me, it's about rules of thumb in a sense. It's just like, so set stuff up that you're comfortable with. One, find a tool that works for you. And it can be, there's just so many tools out there. So find something that works for you. Whether you want to do a one size fits all, like ClickUp or Monday or some of these other tools that are out there that sort of, they have everything. Or a lot of them are CRMs now. Like HubSpot really started out this and has gotten more CRM-y, where a lot of them, you can route your email through there. You can have all your documents there. You can have, email campaigns like your MailChimps and stuff like that can go out of there. So you can have like a one size fits all dashboard. But you may also be like me, you have different levels of stuff as you got your the documents that you're going to use over and over again, and you want those to be pristine or close enough. Like hopefully your resume over your career, you're probably going to keep touching that again and updating it and tweaking it and cleaning it up. You're also probably going to have, hopefully, if you're smart, you're going to have templates. It's like, hey, whenever I write this kind of document, like me, whenever I write a proposal, I've got a proposals folder that has got 20 years back of varying proposals. And so I can go back and pick them in various places and say like, oh yeah, I did this. How did I do that? Save you a little bit of time. And then you also have like Slack conversations or chats or stuff like that, where you want to just pull that information, or raw like console sessions where I was tracking through and trying to install something and get all the right libraries in and stuff like that. So make sure that whatever it is that you use, that it works for you. And then you're going to have to spend some time with it. That's probably the hardest part. You have to invest some time. This is actually the in versus on your business. Part of this is working on your business, is getting your infrastructure together so that you know where things are coming in and where things are going. And if you're like us and you have any, technology pieces to it, to your skill set, and honestly now, even if you don't, there are a lot of automation tools out there. There are a lot of ways for you to figure out your general structure and then automate things to put those in the right places. You can look at like IFTTT, if this, then that.com. You can look at, there's a bunch of other tools out there now that are sites that are built for automation, and they're built to help those that are not as technical or that want a low or zero code approach to their automation, help them figure out what, everything needs to have a place, and then making that automation put those things in their place. That was a lot. So I'm going to take a deep breath for a long time. And so where are you, and maybe talk a little bit about your struggles recently, because I know this is now near and dear to your heart, because you've just gone through a documentation cleanse of some sort.
Yeah. So so you've really touched on kind of the whole organization and approach. You talked about wikis, you talked about, working in your business, working on your business. The problem we run into as entrepreneurs doing side hustles, or even in our day-to-day jobs, is we get busy. We go out, we have to look up things on the internet, we have to download things, we write up documentation, like Rob said, and we get our job done. But the problem is, a lot of times we're under such pressure to start the next piece, to jump onto the next job. The problem is we don't reflect on what we just did. And of course, with source control, we can commit that code, but all those websites we went to, all that research we did, unless you take a step back and go write up a wiki or write up a document and keep track of all that information or put it in a README, you're going to lose it. Because if you just continue to go on to the next project, to the next project, to the next project, you're basically either going to have one heck of a downloads folder where everything's sticking in there and you have no idea where anything is, or you're going to print out stuff, it's going to sit on your desk, it's going to clutter things up. So you need to take a pause. At a certain point, like we've discussed with the email, you don't necessarily have to have zero email in your inbox, but there are rules and structures you can put in place to organize things. So you can write up rules that, oh, I get this email from this person, it goes into this folder. You can essentially do the same thing with your documentation. As you work through the week, maybe do a daily, maybe every Wednesday or every Friday, spend a few minutes, look at your downloads folder. What did I download for the week? Do I need to keep any of this? And if so, where does it belong? The other problem I've run across is, while I do have a decent file folder, file cabinet structure online, the problem I'm running into at the moment is I just shifted companies. So I have my old Melosh Consulting that is now Envision QA. One of the problems I just recently ran into is I was still storing documents into Melosh Consulting that really needed to be in Envision QA. So I actually misfiled information that I really needed. So when I went looking for it, I couldn't find it, which unfortunately then I just had to spend an hour or two digging through all my documents to find where the heck this file was. Finally found it, but that is a level of anxiety you don't want. You want to make sure that you do this sooner than later. Now, like Rob I like the analogy you gave of the students. You know, you're at the end of the semester, you basically clean out your locker and you keep what you want, which really most of us just throw all of our stuff away and we just move on to the next course, unless it's something like Calculus 1, Calculus 2, things of that fun nature. Even then, it's like, do I really need that? If you're like me, I'm a little more of a pack rat when it comes to documentation. I'm always worried I will need that document or I'll need that link to that website. So I have put structures in place to kind of protect myself and keep a lot of that organized for me. One of the interesting things you can do, especially with modern browsers, is a lot of them have bookmark managers. So you can create folders, you can export your bookmarks and import them into other structures. At least once a quarter, I export my bookmark, all my bookmarks to a file, and I store that out in Dropbox. This works for two advantages. One, if I go work for an organization that has the system locked down, I can't log into, say, my Gmail to sync my bookmarks, I can import that bookmark file and boom, I have all my bookmarks in my new system. The other thing that's interesting about it is if you export these or you actually look at the bookmark manager, you can organize your bookmarks like you can a file structure. So you can have all these nice drop downs, everything gets organized. And if you get in the habit of doing that, you start structuring your bookmarks. So as you're looking at stuff online, as you're doing your project, say Java, you go, oh, hey, this is a great topic for Java. I'll save it to my Java bookmarks folder. So now you don't necessarily have to always go Google. You can just go click your bookmarks. Okay, where are my Java topics? Oh, okay, here's the one I'm looking for. Boom, you're off and running. It's also good to put those into README files in projects or even document those in your code as you're working on projects. There's been many times where I found this interesting solution to a problem I've had. 6 months down the road, it's like, well, how did I fix that? Where did I find that? And then you spend another hour or two or a day trying to find that solution again. If you find an answer and it's online, include that link in your code. It doesn't necessarily show that, hey, you had to go borrow from someone else's site. It's like, hey, you found the solution. This is where it is. This is how it works. Don't reinvent the wheel. Include a link, a short description, move on. Also, that gets stored in your source control. So when you commit the code, it's like, boom, hey, this is when we found it. This is where it is. And you can also find it through things like the Git repository or Bitbucket, you don't have to go into the code. You could actually just, or check out the code. I mean, you can go into the code and there's the link. You can click the link and now you can go to the site. So it makes searching for code and solutions within your own projects faster. Another thing to think about real quick is books. So we've talked about, documentation working in your business. I have a lot of technical books, articles, things of that nature that I use all the time. I had a problem keeping track of them. Like I had e-readers, I would drop them on e-readers. I would basically have that with me all the time. I then started carrying them on thumb drives so I could read them on my iPad. The problem I ran into is it's very hard from a file name to tell what a book is or what the book's about. If you download a program called Calibre, it will actually take that file or that file library and import all the metadata for all those books for you. So now all you have to do is open up Calibre, and it's essentially a file structure organizer of all your digital books. So if you have like an iPad or things like that, you can still import them into those, but you can do it all from this program called Calibre, and it works for both Windows and Mac. Rob, it looked like you had something to jump in, so I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, I was actually, there's a bunch of little points there that as I was thinking through this, some others, and you touched on some things that are some other things that are very valuable in us having a good storage structure, particularly in the world, in the digital sense. One of the things to think about was, all right, I guess the first thing to think about is that being an hoarder of some sort or an pack rat is not really necessarily a bad thing, because you're not taking up, generally speaking, you're not taking up a ton of space, and space is cheap. So you can easily have particularly if you go beyond like the most basic stuff, everybody has a Google Drive effectively, and you can have a Google Drive attached to, I think, every single Gmail account you have, and it's like a terabyte or something. It's a huge amount of space right now. So for free, you already have access to a huge amount of storage space that's cloud storage, if you're okay with cloud storage. And for the most part, there's really nothing wrong with it, I don't think. So, but Google's got it, Microsoft's got it, part of their OneDrive stuff. If you've got Office 365, obviously there's Box and Dropbox and all these other places that are out there that are really good storage. Not to mention, just spin up you can go get an AWS light server and store stuff there. And it's going to cost you a little bit, but not a ton. Or you could even use like their S3 and use that to push some of these documents that you're never going to touch again, basically, but just put them out there. That way you've got an opportunity to get to them. So it's not as the risk reward, the cost and the benefit of being an pack rat is not the same as in real life, because we have a lot bigger. It's like it'd be like being a pack rat when you've got a huge global warehouse that you can pack rat your stuff into. And digital stuff, if you set it up even halfway right, you can go searching for it. It may take a little bit, but that goes into one of the things that if you do this preemptively, like Michael mentioned, like you don't want to be looking for it when you really need it right now. You want to be able to just get that quick. You don't want to be having to restructure stuff to go find that thing you need when you need it right now. So instead, if you think this through and you have a strategy, it's like he said, if like you've got like, hey, I've got a Java folder where I'm going to put all my Java links. When you see one, you don't have to think. It becomes habitual that you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to throw that in my Java folder. I'm going to throw that in my Oracle folder. I'm going to throw that in my Microsoft folder. Whatever it is, it just makes that whole process much cleaner. And it really doesn't cost you anything anymore. So it becomes it's part of building up a good habit. One of the things that you can do that is a value of this, and Michael sort of brushed up against this, is the idea of holding also binaries and older files. There's a lot of times that I've had environments that were spun up. There's software I built 20 years ago that I could go still run, I think, 100%. I haven't tried in a while, but if I needed to, I could actually go like run that, because I have the exact version of all of the softwares there behind. Now, things do age out and stuff like that, but particularly within probably like a 3 to 5 year, window, you may have, like, for example, Java's one that there's always new versions, new versions, new versions, new versions. And then the tools around them, there's new versions, new versions, new versions, new versions. So if you wanted to go spin up an environment, the development environment you used 2 years ago, it may take you quite a while to find that stuff on the internet because those people are going to be archiving stuff off. If you have your own archive, then you can control that. The last thing I wanted to throw out there was Michael was talking about, like, do a regular, it's that regular locker clean out. And we haven't talked too much about the getting things done style of stuff, but GTD, getting things done, it really is file system based. And if you spend any time, you realize how much it's beyond what I do. But one of the things that I found is a really good GTD habit to get into, and I've got, like, right on my wall on my desk, because it's one of those things I've gotten away from it, and this is where I need to get back to it. But he says, like, basically every week there's 3 things you should do. You should set aside some time, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you bake cakes, whatever it is. In the GTD approach is you essentially once a week, because you're working on sort of weekly sprints or schedules, is first thing he says, get clear, which is basically like clean off your desk. Like, figure out what is sitting here that I need to do something with. I need to either, like, if it's only gonna take a minute, I need to do it. Or if it's something I need to file, I need to file it. And then it's get current. So it's like, now that I've sort of shifted that stuff off, all right, where am I at? What am I doing? What have I got to get done? What have I got to get done next week? And then once you've sort of got the critical stuff or the high priority stuff, then it's the get creative, where it's like, okay, let's think a little bit about what am I doing next week, or what do I want to do a week from now, or 2 weeks from now, or what is it that I've done a lot of that I want to automate? It's where do I want to work, be more a little more efficient maybe in what I do, or find ways to improve my productivity. So it's a really simple, just make sure you have a regular time, and it works best on a weekly basis. It may be Monday morning when you get in, or it may be Friday before you leave work, or you shut down for work, depending on, if you're remote, it's a little different, but it's still, set yourself some time. I would say put it on your schedule, just like schedule some time, probably at least a half hour, probably an hour every week, where you're just like, okay, this is my wrap up effectively. And it's, I'm wrapping up the week behind the week of what I've just done. What are the couple of things I've got to get, like, what do I have to get done now? Get it done. And then it's planning for the week ahead. And if you're somebody where your week just gets out of control and you need more than an hour, then take more than an hour. But it's just so that you are not stressing because you're trying to find stuff and figure out what you're supposed to do. Instead, you've got a very, in front of you, this is what I'm doing. This is what I need to get done. Here's what my priorities are. Final thoughts?
Yeah, along those lines, we really talked a lot about the infrastructure side of things today, working on your business and working in your business. The things we didn't get too technical on, but if you go back to some past conversations we've had, especially around the automation of your what you're working on. So if you see a lot of repetitive as you're going through this process, you can automate some of this approach. For instance, Rob mentioned, he was building those Linux servers for his applications. The trick with that, you could essentially go in and do the history and pull out all the scripts or all the command lines that you ran, store that in a wiki. So next time you can say, okay, if I'm under this environment, here are the commands I ran, or even save that as a script. So these are some other things you can do to help streamline the process and organize your thoughts going forward.
And I would not, it may be a little more an advanced topic kind of thing, but I think the idea of, like, platform as code and stuff like that, particularly, really, like, Docker environments are really not that hard. It's going to take a little investment, and by a little, I mean, it's probably maybe a couple of days, I would say almost at most, to just sort of get comfortable with Docker and Docker Compose and some of particularly if you're in very typically the same kind of environment, and getting your environment spun up. Because once you do, then you just, basically copy and paste that script. Maybe you have to change a couple names. Maybe you don't, or maybe change a couple port numbers or something like that. And then boom, you've got another environment up. And that can really speed your ability to like jump into a new project. That being said, you can really speed our opportunity and our ability to jump into a new season if you throw some suggestions out there. We do have some ideas trying to figure out where we want to go, but we are always open for whether it's whether it's one episode, whether it's a season. Maybe you want some like multi-season arc or some kind of thing that it's like, hey, this would be really cool for you guys to cover for the next 6 years. We'll see how that goes, but things that are shorter, definitely. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking to just find the ways that we can better help you become better, help us help you. A lot of helping. The point is like, let's just get moving forward and grow, because that's how we do these things. It's just like this, just like your folder structure. If you can clean that up and make a couple of changes, and it can help you be more productive. It frees up more time. It allows you to do more stuff. And then hopefully at some point allows you to spend a little more time circling back to revamp and, automate again, simplify or integrate or automate your system, your filing, your processes. That being said, I'm going to let you process this for a little bit. We're going to go process some more caffeine and go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Any bonus material that you wanted on this one?
Just wanted to again touch on automation. So as you're reviewing your file structure, so to speak, or your organization skills, Rob mentioned a couple applications you can use, the online storage companies. You can use Monday, email. Just one of the biggest things that I find myself and a lot of good organized people do is look at your tasks, look at what you do daily. See if you do anything repetitive that you could streamline through automation, through be it an application, be it you write a script, or you just write a batch file that you could click a link and boom, it opens up all your stuff for your day, or even runs a bunch of applications for you to organize files. Even to that extent, for instance, what we're doing here with the podcast, I'm even looked at using applications to help streamline our process for editing videos. So you could even write an application that could look for keywords and then it would cut your video. So these are little things or organizational skills that you can do to make your life a lot easier.
I think I would say one thing I would like to add too to this is that automation does not have to require code or even really technology. I think the first thing I automated when I was starting out my career to get to improve my processes and just speed my ability and improve, from week to week to week, because I had one of those old, was it the Covey planners? I had a day planner. It was a day runner, I guess, the knockoff of it. And each day I had sort of my to-do list. Each week I had some, I want to get stuff done. And then at the next week, when I would flip over to the next Sunday to Saturday, then I could basically look at my prior week, and then I could roll stuff over that I didn't do. But I also looked at sort of the general structure of things that I've done, or, 2 weeks back or 3 weeks back or 4 weeks back. It would be stuff like, hey, do I need to go get an oil change again? And some of that is like, okay, I need to schedule this out. Or it would be stuff like, I know to put on an order for this, or I need to renew that, those kinds of things. And you can use like your little Post-it notes that he's throwing there, or you can be like me. And I also like the physical writing piece of it. It helps me remember stuff and things like that. And it's just, I don't know, there's some geek in me that enjoys having that. So you just write you write your stuff down, and then you have now a structure, whether it's like, and a lot of people use notepads, just use like actual, journal type notepads and stuff, and take notes in there and put markings around it and things so that you can flip back and you can find it. That doesn't require any code. And sometimes it's a really good first step, because you do that manually. And then at some point you get to the point where you go to like say you're using written journals, you say, hey, I'm going to go try Evernote out or something or I'm going to go to Wiki Pages, or I'm going to go to this or that or the other. That is really the digital form of what we do in the physical world. And it start with like everything else. Define your process, and then you can refine it. And then eventually you can automate it and replicate it, because you want that process solid. Because if it's a crappy process and you do it a whole lot, you just created a whole big pile of crap. But if it's a really, solid process, then running it a bunch of times theoretically will, improve things and make things better. You'll get more done faster. So even though we always lean towards, because that's who we are, we lean towards the technology and the code kind of side of stuff. You don't really have to go that far. If you're freaking out, you're like, I don't know where I'd go. It's too many tools and all that. Just take a deep breath, cleansing breath, do something simple. Start, maybe it's just like as simple as your process is, I'm going to list the 3 tasks I'm going to get done each day, and do that for a while until you realize that there's tasks that turn up on a regular basis, or there's all these other tasks I think I got to do that I forget that don't go on my list, but then those become tasks that I do every day. So that being said, I think our task is right now, I'm going to go get more caffeine, and we're going to wrap this one up and try to see how our time goes. But we'll come back. We will, as far as you're concerned, we'll come back next episode, just like we always have been. And we're going to go into actually, I think it's going to be our final episode of this season and wrap up season 21 of the podcast. And we're going to go into season 22 and we'll sort of see where this goes. But guys, have a good one. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. As always, info@developreneur.com for emails. Check out developreneur.com. There's a contact us. There's a lot of material out there. That's something that we need to, at some point, speaking of organizing, we need to get that organized some. We would love to do that. We've sort of started, but it's one of those we waited too long. So don't be us. Organize today before you get a huge pile of stuff that you got to go spend some time to sort through. Have a good one, and we will talk to you next time.